Hello, family, and welcome back to the Amplify You podcast. I am Braden Ricketts with my co-host, sister, and business partner, Michelle. And today we are going behind the mic with one of our favorite clients,
Wow.
spiritual mentor, writer, speaker, facilitator of the Your Story to Your Glory program. And I have to say, influencer of my own personal verbiage, my own vernacular, and has all changed having met the host of the Karen Kenney Show. Welcome, Karen Kenney.
Oh my God, you guys, I'm so excited to be here, and I just love you both so much. And what an honor. Like, I had no idea. Like, I just started working with you guys, and we all kind of like fell in love so quickly. And it's been like a fast and furious friendship, and just what a treat to get to be on your show. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, we're so excited to have you. And this is like one of our favorite things to do is like really get behind the stories of what you created as a podcast yourself and what that's done for your business. Now you have gotten off to, let's just tell our audience, a crazy fast start in your podcast and have gone already like up to like 1,500 downloads in the first like month, which is great. So we're so excited and so proud of the work that you've been doing. It's really cool to see it just go. It's like we said, it's going to take on a life of its own soon.
Yeah, and I couldn't do it without you guys. I mean, the one thing I have is the gift for gab. Like, you know, I used to have a local access, right? So think wicked low budget, like TV show, the yoga show with Karen, and it was wicked popular with the prisoners in New Hampshire because they started writing to me and calling my house collect. It was fabulous. I had to put the kibosh on those collect calls. But so we had like a really low production value in terms of meaning I had a lovely family called the Sokol, Stan and Lucilla, and they were my director and my camera person and stuff like that. But then she got sick and she was having a series of time where she couldn't be there. And so then my crew came down. It was just me and Stan would be behind the glass, like in his thing. And then I would just have all these different cameras angled at me. So I would just literally sit in a room and talk to myself, like talk to the viewers, but it was really just me alone in a room talking. So I was like, it's really a transferable skill set to being a podcaster because now I just sit in my little weirdo closet in my writing office and I just talk up here. So I'm actually so grateful because after that show ended, I did it for like 13 years and I was the producer and the host. And then I stopped the show because I was transitioning out of yoga into spiritual mentoring. But I always knew I wanted to do another show. And the cool thing about this is you guys have helped me to kind of take my vision and my idea and to bring it like into real life. And so I'm so grateful for that because to me, podcasting, and I also do it as a video cast, I put it on YouTube, but for me, it's just a way to do verbal storytelling. And that's how I most identify as a storyteller. And so I'm just having a blast and I can't even believe it's not that I don't have self-confidence or self-worth, but I kind of go, shit, man, I can't believe like people I know, even people I know are listening because I don't expect my friends and family to listen because they're like sick of you. They're like, I know her, like whatever.
They've heard all your stories.
Yeah, they're like, whatever, you know, but no, I have friends who are listening and, you know, they say like, I think you found a new niche here for like your business and what you're doing. Like, this is so natural and they love it. And I'm like, that's such like heartwarming feedback because, you know, they don't have to listen. You know what I mean? So the fact that they're choosing to do it is great.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. We're so excited to be on the journey with you as this thing gets just revved up and is starting to soar. You said that you're a storyteller and that absolutely comes through in every episode that we've heard of your podcast. I can tell that you actually conceptualize what the audience's experience is while listening to your show. Now, this is behind the mic, so we're going to go peek behind the curtains a little bit.
I love that. Yeah, let's do it.
When I got your first 3 episodes that we were going to edit and post for you, I noticed on episode 2 or episode 3, you batch recorded these. So you did these all back to back in your little, like you said, weirdo closet and then sent them to us. But what I loved, what kind of stuck out for me was that even in your second recording, you were thanking people for all the feedback and comments on the first episode, you knowing that it will have aired before the first and you're going to hear from people. So you're including them in that second episode, knowing that that was going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I try to think about like, so as a person who is a storyteller, and I'm also a writer, but I write kind of cinematically. I always think very visually. And so I was just thinking, and I want to like set the tone for myself that I was going to be successful, right? So did I know that a bunch of people were going to be writing reviews and listening in? I don't know, but like I was like, okay, I'm going to hold that vision that people are going to do it. And I knew I had to batch the first 3 because of the way that Libsyn and iTunes and everything works. Like, you know, when you finally launch, you're actually launching like your first 4 episodes, right? Or something like that. Yeah. So I was just trying to think about like, okay, ideally what would happen? Well, ideally a bunch of people would be listening and they'd be digging it. It's like, that's really cool. Then the other thing I try to do is, because I know that some people are listening and I know how intimate, like you guys were the ones who were reminding me of this principle, that you are literally in somebody's ears, which means you're literally in their head, right? And it's such an intimate experience. So I was thinking like, oh, well, there are people who are going to watch this on YouTube who can see me, but for the people at home who can't see me, and like you pull them into your world. So I try to describe like, you know, what I'm doing. I'm like, oh, you guys can't see me right now, but right now I'm doing like amen hands, or I'll like kind of describe what's happening. And I try to really pull them into the experience with me, because that's what this is all about. Like Leo Tolstoy, the Russian writer, I'm paraphrasing, but he has a great line, and he says, A-A-T, it's hard with my accent. At is transferring feeling from one hat to another. And that's really what I'm trying to do with this podcast, is to take stuff that I'm passionate about, spirituality and storytelling, transferring it from my hat into the hats and the minds and the ears, right? In the homes, really, of my listeners. So I try to be really aware of, you know, what's their experience going to be like. And hopefully I continue to, so thank you for the compliment, first of all. And hopefully I continue to be aware of that, because I think one of the things when you're alone in your tiny little weird room, it's easy to forget, like, oh, eventually people are going to be watching this, right? So invite them into the experience with you.
Yeah, I love that you described like your room to them, and like what, like, so if they can't see where you're recording, this is what it looks like, this is where I am. And, you know, another behind the scenes funny thing, one of the funniest things was when we got your first transcription back, because of your awesome Boston accent. The transcriptions were so funny. They were like, oh, it's like another language.
The transcriptions were do you guys remember when I said, oh my God, the transcriptions, first of all, it's like Siri, like my phone, like Siri doesn't know what to do with me. It makes just up garbage. Like it just makes up a whole other language. It's like Dothraki, you know, Game of Thrones. So Siri doesn't know what to do with my accent. And then the transcription program doesn't know what to do with me. But then remember when it just started adding swears, and we were laughing so hard because I have such a potty mouth, and Braden was like, oh yeah, it's a safe bet. Just add another swear in there. Nobody will notice. It was so funny. Oh, it cracks me up.
If the transcriber doesn't know what to put it in there, just throw a few F-bombs.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. But even that's like so genius. Like when you guys were telling me that one of the things you offer as part of your package of helping people to launch their podcast in like 30 days, which is so cool, right? Because I will say this. So 2 things. Don't let me forget the point I was just about to make. But 2 things is that so many people usually who do podcasts, they've been thinking about it for a wicked long time. And they just get frozen. They become immobilized. What do they call it? When you get paralyzed by analyzing too much. Analysis paralysis. That's it. So they won't launch. So they're sitting on this purpose and this dream and this way of connecting with their brothers and sisters, and they just get caught up in the, like, for me, it was the tech side. I wasn't worried about like, am I going to be myself? Is it going to be weird? Like, because I see people all the time saying, does anybody else start recording and all of a sudden you don't sound like yourself? Like you sound like you, because people start becoming affected in their speech and they get weird. Like, I wasn't really worried about that, but I'm like, what do I do with all these things once I'm done hitting record? And so you guys have made that process so wicked easy and smooth for me, like, which I loved. So that was awesome. So I could, because I've been wanting to do a podcast for 6 years. My sweetie, my husband, who's a professional musician, wrote me music like 3 years ago. And I've just been sitting on it because I was like, I would start and like, I like kept pumping my own brakes because I was like, when I tried to sign on even to Libsyn, I got overwhelmed by all the tech language. And you guys, what you do in your Amplify You is you just make the process wicked fun, actually. It's like, yeah, just record these and send them to us. And I'm like, that's it? I remember just being like, that's all I have to do? I can do that, you know? But what was the other thing I was going to say? What was the last thing we were just saying?
I know. I was too busy listening to your commercial for us. That was
yeah. If it was like, if it's not important, like it'll come back. But yeah, but no, but really, you guys, I'm truly grateful because, as an artist, it's like, I don't want to be thinking about the shit I can't do. Like, I don't want to focus on the tech stuff. I don't want to focus on getting an audiogram for Instagram and the link and how do I get it on LinkedIn and all this stuff. Oh, transcripts. I know what I was going to say. So one of the cool things that you guys did, Braden especially, because words are kind of like your genius too, is that you were pointing out like, well, we can take the transcripts and we can pull stuff from it. It's like, boom, instant content. I'm like, oh yeah. So now I'm doing something verbally, right? Audio, because here's the other thing. People learn in such different ways, right? Some people learn from auditory. Some people learn visually. Some people are kinetic. So I love being able to blast them and use multi-content from doing one thing. Like I hit record and then I can do an audiogram there. I can do a profile thing on Facebook. I can do a story over here. I can do a tweetable because I pulled out the content from this transcript. It's just like, it's like one, it's not one and done. It's like one and a bunch of other stuff gets created from this one thing. And you're the ones who helped me to see the possibility, which is really cool.
And I think
that's
you're
exciting.
That said too, that like you sometimes when you're recording, you don't even realize like the genius of what you're saying until like we get the transcriptions back and we're reading. It's like, that was amazing. You've got to put that out in like social media. Like that was such a good, like, because you're in such a focused stage of, whether you're interviewing someone in curiosity mode
yes.
or, you're saying something that you believe so passionately about. I think that's really a neat thing as well. And I wanted to go back to your sweetie for a second because props.
Yes.
He made this music like how long ago? And you actually used it on your show. Like, yes.
Yeah.
He had a good vision for that.
My sweetie is a wicked talented multi-instrumentalist and a producer and a singer and a songwriter. And it's really hard because it's not like for me, I never, as a writer, and I think you guys can appreciate this, it's like, even though we're all one, I'm like, we're all brothers and sisters, we're all one ultimately. But in this world of marketing, business, branding, you have to stand out, right? And as a writer, I never want to sound like anybody else like me. That's why I don't steal other people's shit. I'm not that interested. Like, I don't, like, whatever you're doing, beautiful, go balls to the wall, do it. But I don't want to copy anybody. Like, I just want to sound most like me. But when you're trying to find music for your podcast, it's like, who am I musically? Like, what's my vibe? Like, musically. And so I was like, sweetie, I'm kind of quirky and I'm kind of weird and I'm kind of upbeat, but I don't want it to be too like poppy because I'm not like a girl, like a swirly girl or whatever. I'm like, can we figure something out? And he would just look at me like, okay. And he'd go down in the basement and he did, I think like 5 different pieces of music. And the one that I ended up using was the one that I picked years ago. And I said, I think this is it. I loved it. And when it came back around, we listened to them, and I even went to the resources that you sent me for the free music to, or you could pay or whatever. And I'm like, nothing's going to be better that was made by somebody who loves me and knows me the best, right? So I re-listened, and I'm like, that's it. I had it all along.
Amazing. I love that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I keep saying to him, sweetie, because he plays guitar, bass, drums, keyboards, mandolin. I'm like, sweetie, you could totally make money doing podcast music for people who want original pieces of music, He's just not like, he's been a musician since he was 3 years old. So he's been doing this for like a gazillion years. So he's not like, how do I say it? He doesn't promote himself. That's not his skill set. He can do the production piece, but he's not going to, he's very humble. He's not going to go out and do that. But anyways, it was fun.
We can promote him. Yeah. I love your music. It's so great. It makes me want to dance when I listen to it too. It's great.
Thank you.
So 6 years you wanted to start a podcast.
Yeah.
3 years ago you got the music.
Yeah.
It was only 2 months ago that you came to us. And now you've got 7 episodes by the time this is being recorded live.
Yes.
With 1,500 downloads already. So you've had this quick start with a great response.
Yeah.
And how has it affected your business so far?
Well, I think right now is that, so here's a perfect example. Okay. So today, my my friend and my spiritual mom, Marianne Williamson, is in town. I'm in New Hampshire, and she's campaigning to become president of the United States, right? So I went to her event to go see her, give her some love. And while I'm standing there talking to her, people are sitting, it was at like the Law Center in Concord or whatever, and there's a few people sitting around, and this woman goes, Karen. And I'm like, oh, hi. And she's like, do you remember me? I'm Gail. We met at this other event. We have mutual friends. We're friends on Facebook. And then I go like, ding, ding, ding. Okay, I know who you are. And she's sitting with a few people. And then there's a person in front of her. And then there's another person, right? And she goes, you guys, this is Karen. She's amazing. You should hear her podcast. I'm obsessed. I listen to every episode. Now, she and I have probably had like a 30-second conversation before any of this. She's like, I just listened to your latest one. I loved it. And I love the one about being willing to be unpopular, because that's something I'm going through right now, like finding my own voice. And I'm like, that's so cool. That's amazing. And then her two friends go, what's your name? And immediately, boom, boom, Facebook friend me. Then they subscribe. And they're comparing, like, what episode are you on? Because I want to catch up. Which episode should I listen to first? She's like, she has an amazing story. You have to listen to Origin's story. The guy in front of them goes, he just totally leans around. He goes, you have a podcast? What's the name of it? I want to listen. And I'm like, oh, I'm Karen Kenney. And I show him the thing. And then the woman next to her goes, she's a professor. And she's like, wait, you have a podcast? So literally within like 2 minutes, these people know me. And here's what I know to be true. I don't have a business that, like, very rarely, people will meet me and they go, that's my mentor. That's my coach. I have to sign up right now. Like, they get the download from their spiritual team and they're on it. Most people, because of the work that I do in spiritual mentoring, helping people, as we call it, transform their story to their glory. Their story is really just the wicked hard shit that they've been through in their life. And it's trying to help them to shift their perspective from a place of victimization to a place of victory, from fear to love, from pain to peace, the whole thing. So it's helping people rewrite their stories. And so it's not like people are like always wicked psyched to like work on that stuff and to make the investment, because it's a financial investment, a time investment, whatever, into my program. And so it usually is from the first time I meet somebody. It takes sometimes up to a couple of years. So what the podcast is doing is it's expediting that for me, because now on a weekly basis, people can hear me, feel me, get a vibe from me, trust me. We call it the know, like, trust factor. And so by me just being myself, I don't have to market my programs. They're going to decide, I'm not saying people say this about me, but I know how I decide if I'm going to, like you guys, I'm like, oh, they're the real deal. They've had success. They know what they're doing. They're my people, right? So people will find out through watching me and listening whether or not I'm the real deal for them. And so I just feel like, again, because if we're being business people, my sales process, it usually takes like a year, 2 years, like whatever, a lot of personal touch points. Mm-hmm. But I think that the podcast is working miracles in ways that I'm not even aware of yet. Yeah. I don't think that people have been writing to me and calling me and saying, I think you found a new niche or niche for yourself. Like, this is part of your genius. And I'm just, again, goofing around up in my closet, loving, like, I love the process. I love telling stories. It's how I love people and spread the love and connect. But I think it has an energy of its own. It has an assignment of its own that I'm not even I'm like, who knows what's going to happen? So I think this little show that is going to take me places that I can't even imagine yet.
I love that. That's fantastic. It's like you found the way to broadcast yourself, and the people that are interested in that frequency will find you. And something you've said before, people not interested in that frequency are more easily just rejected by it or turned away, because that's important part of business too.
Self-rejected.
Yeah.
100%. I think if your marketing is done well, if it's done right, you will equally attract and repel. And my marketing is designed for that. If you think my Boston accent makes me sound stupid, if you can't stand the sound of my voice, I'm not for you. If you don't like that I swear, I'm not for you. If you offend yourself with adult language, as Marie Forleo says, I'm not for you. If you're not really, but the people who I am for, they resonate very quickly. And like I said, they might not quote unquote
by you too, right?
Yeah, right. People.
I love it.
Sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
No, I was just going to say, like, the people, I think the podcast is going to help amplify that you're such a magnetic personality that I think, and people love you on social media. They'll really connect with you. But I think then the podcast is going to amplify it even more because it's so intimate, like you said, in their ears, and they get to hear from you once a week, I think, which is amazing. So I think you're right. I think this show's got places to take you, and it's going to be exciting to watch.
Well, it's taking us. Like, we're a team. Like, I'm very aware that what I do, it's not really
We're coming with you no matter what.
I'm kind of making you, like if you notice, I keep saying that to you guys, like, you're coming with me. I'm not going there. You're like, we have other clients. But you both said things that, you both used words that I love. And it was one of the signs from my spiritual team that I knew I was supposed to work with you, because I love the word broadcasting, first of all, because I feel like ultimately I'm like, I don't know, like, I want to have like it's not going to be the Oprah show, but like, I've always been pulled to, like, I want to have a show. And I feel like this is a step in that direction. I don't know ultimately what it is, like Impact Theory, Super Soul Sunday, like whatever the show is, but I feel like this is a start to begin to broadcast out, not just to my listeners, but to the universe. This is my intention. Like, I want to expand and connect with my brothers and sisters on a more global level. And then you say, well, your whole business, right, is called Amplify You. That amplification, first of all, I'm married to a guy who has way too many amps down in the basement, but I know the power of amplification. And I'm just like, that has been one of my struggles, right, is or what I felt like was one of my roadblocks, is that I'm just a person in fucking New Hampshire. Like, how do I reach people? And so what a podcast does is it allows you to travel beyond like time and space. Like, you get to go out to other countries, other states, other whatever, and you're no longer bound by geography. And so having that amplification system set up, and you guys, that's why I love, when I found out your business was called Amplify You, I was like, oh, my people, like, they get it, So I was really excited about that.
That's so awesome. And can you take us back to like what is it, your show for you? What do you do in your show? Tell our audience so they can go listen to you. First of all, you gotta go listen to definitely the origin story. Karen's first episode, she tells us all about her life story, and then tell us a little bit about like your show for you. What does it do for you? And what does it mean?
Yeah. So for me, like, so the origin story, like those of you who are tuning into this, like if you just go listen to that, you'll get all what I would like, all the like deeper details of the story. The short version is that, grew up like 30 miles north of Boston in a little city called Lawrence, Mass. It was an immigrant city, tough childhood. Like who didn't, like, you guys, I don't know. I always say when I meet kids who, like, I call everybody kids, but when I meet people who are like, I had a really happy childhood, I'm like, you're like a fucking unicorn. Like, I think it's amazing. But a lot of us had like difficult childhoods. So there's a lot of stories around this, but the heartbeat, like the kicker, if I was going to have a headline story of my childhood, it's that my mother was murdered when I was 12. And she was violently beaten to death, kicked and punched to death, and she died. And it was just awful. It was just like a whole thing. It's gory and violent and terrible. And so that kicking, like that inciting incident, as a writer might call it, right? That inciting incident just launched me into a whole other kind of realm as a 12-year-old. And so I started asking the bigger questions that a lot of people don't start asking till they're having like a midlife crisis, when they're starting to become aware of their mortality. Like, what is God? Why am I here? What's my purpose? What's this all about anyways? Like, so forgiveness, like, I knew that I was suffering. My mother was the light of my world. And when she gone, it was like, I always say my mother was kind of like the compass that I used to navigate the world. And when she was gone, ultimately, I always say it became one of my greatest gifts, because it led me to have to find my own inner compass. And so that her death and the way that she died is what led me into a lot of self-help books, spirituality, asking the bigger questions. And one of the biggest one is, how do I stop suffering? Like, this feels like shit. Like, I feel victimized by the world. Like, I feel terrible. I don't want to feel this way anymore. And one of the things that I've always believed, and I don't know if it's just a New England thing, a blue collar thing, a Catholic thing. I don't know what the thing was. I was raised as a Catholic kid. I'm kind of a spiritual mutt now. Long-time Course in Miracles student of passage meditation, yoga. I've been a yoga teacher for over 20 years. So I pull from like whatever I find helpful. But one of the things I've always said is, if you are lucky enough to make it, if you get on the elevator and that elevator takes you to the top floor of your life, your spiritual life, your business, whatever, you had better send that sucker back down for the other people who are coming up behind you. Like, we have an obligation. And Ram Dass says it so beautifully. He says, we're all just walking each other home. And so I was like, okay, I figured out some tools, some spiritual things that I could put in my toolbox that helped me to shift my perspective from fear to love and to show up in the world differently. And I'm like, I know I have a bunch of brothers and sisters that are struggling with grief. They're struggling with victimization. They're struggling with these old stories and limiting beliefs that like aren't serving them anymore. And I was just like, how can I be used? And I ask every day, I ask God, I ask my spiritual team, I ask the divine, where would you have me go? What would you have me say? What would you have me do? And to whom? Please use me. And so I'm always asking the question, how can I most be served? Like, how can I be most useful and serve others, I guess? And of course, let's be honest, like, I got to keep a roof over my head, like, and make money. So how can I have a purpose that's in alignment, that is abundant financially, spiritually, creatively, as a writer and stuff like that? And so I was like, well, I want to do two of the things that I love the most besides animals. I'm a longtime animal advocate, vegan, 16 plus years. But one of the things, I love spirituality and storytelling. And I was like, well, all right, well, I'm doing spiritual mentoring. That's a way for people to work with me. But I'm like, I always want to be adding value. I'm like a chronic and compulsive helper. So I'm like, okay, well, if I do this podcast, I can help people. And it all things, like if I was to be psychoanalyzed, I guarantee you all roads would point back to my mom on some level. But really what it is, there's this saying that hurt people, they tend to hurt people. And I always flip it. I flip everything. I flip the script on everything. And I always say, well, happy people tend not to hurt people. And I'm like, I like to help people find their happiness. And A Course in Miracles says that happiness and peace is your natural inheritance. So if people aren't feeling happy and peaceful, inner peace on the average, if that's not your normal experience, we know something is off. And I just know that there are times in our life when we all need help. And I was like, okay, well, I can use this podcast, to tell great stories, because I have a lot of great stories in my life. And I have a blast telling them, like, genuinely, you can see, like, I get so excited. I love helping people tell their stories. I help people rewrite their stories. I always say, change a story, you change your life, right? And so I get to do that. I get to connect with people. I also get to let them know about my business and what I offer. So the podcast, its purpose is multifaceted. It's like, I love the word, and I also love the object of kaleidoscopes, like you twist it and all of a sudden it's like a new point of view. And so I always say with my podcast, I'm not trying to tell people what to think, but just invite them into the possibility that there's a different way of thinking. There's a new way of looking at your story. And the new way of looking at it is where you will find your peace, is where you will find your freedom. And so you can start to move through the world with more confidence and compassion and courage and connection. And so that's my hope for the show, that, and maybe it's like, highfalutin, like I have all this, but I really infuse it with my true self. And I want what I share from my heart to land in the hearts of others and somehow be helpful. So I know I talk so. It's like fire hosing you. I apologize for fire hosing.
Love it.
Just saying amen. Preach. I love it. That is absolutely beautiful. I think getting your voice out there into the world is exactly what Michelle and I started Amplify You for, is to find the people that have something to say that can impact and support and build community, and helping amplify that voice in order to make change in the world. And you're exactly that. We are beyond thrilled to be working with you and seeing how far we could take this.
Yeah, me too. And I always say to you guys jokingly, I don't know what you guys think you want to do, but I feel like I'm like, I know you two. I'm like, I feel like I'm getting in on the ground floor of something really big. Like, I get to be like, I was one of the originals. Like, I was, the first 25, like whatever. Because you guys, like, whenever you're trying to do something, so A Course in Miracles says that when an idea is shared, it grows stronger. And so I was over here thinking like, this is kind of what I want to do. And then I met you guys and I shared my idea, and then you shared your ideas, and it just amplifies. It does. It just goes like, whoa, 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 whoa. It just goes out. And so together, we are stronger together. And I just feel like 3 years, we're going to look back. We're going to be like, remember when we were doing this little dinky thing with your Zoom and your little mic up in your room? And I'm going to be like, and now I'm on this show, and like, holy shit, you guys, like so I always say like, my vision for this, because I'm not omnipotent, but I'm like, my vision is probably still so small. And A Course in Miracles says, child of God, you don't ask for too much, you ask for too little. And I believe that we're tapping into something, and you guys took I know I paid you and stuff like that, but you guys took a shot on me. Like, you really have believed in me from the start, and it's only been 5 weeks, but like, we're going places, kid.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to have you back on the show in a few months from now to see really we can go look back on this show again and be like, yeah, this is where it started, and now look where it's going. And I think so many doors are going to open, and so many stages and platforms are in your future. I think it's so amazing. So
yeah, and I think people who are trying to have a show, they should think expansively. Like, part of this too is, I always say, like, because I'm writing a memoir, right? And ultimately, I'm also building a platform for that book. Like, everything that I do is starting to gather an audience for whatever I end up creating. I don't know where all this is going to go, but it's like, I'm already starting to build. And the key word is genuine, like genuine relationships. And it was funny because the woman today, when she started talking about me in front of me to her friends, she said, I'm sorry, Karen, I know this is so weird, but when you have somebody in your ears, you feel like you know them already. So she was like talking about me, and I was just like, okay, like, because really? She does. She already feels like she's my friend, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, just say it's really the most intimate form of communicating your story, your brand, your message, your business, because people are plugging it into their ears and taking it with them.
Like, literally putting you in their head. So you're in there, I say you're in their hands, you're in their head, you're in their hearts, you're in their homes. And it's like, it's a really big deal to be invited in. And I don't, that's the other thing too. I have a lot of gratitude. Like, I bless every episode before it goes out. Like, I blast it with love. I infuse it with love, because I'm like, I often say to my clients, you have to be so vigilant for the quality of your thoughts, words, and actions, especially what you're saying to a brother and sister, whether you're texting it, writing it on Facebook, Instagram, whatever, saying it and leaving a voicemail, because you might be the only gospel that somebody hears that day. And I want to make sure that because, when you're a little kid and somebody says something mean to you, little kids don't apply meaning based on rationale. We do it by feeling, and our emotions are too immature when we're little. So somebody sometimes when we're little kids says something to us like, you're fat, you're weird, you're not smart, you're not whatever, which we interpret as you're not good enough, you're not lovable, you're not safe, whatever. And we take that as the gospel truth. And then it gets in our way and that's the work that I'm often doing, is I'm helping these adults who are actually just terrified, scared, wounded little kids rewrite those old stories and assign new meaning. So when I do my podcast, I try to be vigilant for the quality of my thoughts, because I know that in their ears might be the only gospel they hear that day. And so I take this, and I know I'm wicked bubbly and fun, but I take having a voice and a platform, because not all my brothers and sisters, as a white person, I am aware that not all my brothers and sisters have that equal opportunity. So if I'm going to be a voice out there, and that's the other thing, I can use my show to invite people who don't have voices onto my show, and I can kind of even the playing field a little bit and educate. Like, my next episode is with my friend Susan Next Jane, is like all about race and diversity and culture, and it's amazing. So people can just say, oh, it's just a little podcast, but man, there is spiritual power behind what people can do with these things.
Absolutely. And what you said there, like, even you've got 1,500 downloads on the first 7 episodes. That's 1,500 people who would have never heard you maybe say these things. And it's creating an impact. And that's going to have a ripple effect, just like you saw today, as they shared it with the people that are all standing around them. I love the ripple effects. And I love how much intention you put behind your message. When you're going in to record an episode, how much of it do you plan out before getting started recording?
So the way that I work is I get inspired by a lot of different things. So like I might be at the gym and I see somebody doing something, or I hear something, or I'll catch a piece of music or whatever. And all of a sudden I go, oh, that's a great episode. So all I usually know going in, I swear to God, is the title. Like sometimes I'll go, I don't know, this is something about being a helper. I don't know, Mr. Rogers' mother used to say this thing. I'm going to do a thing about that. And so one of the things about being a spiritual teacher, a spiritual thought leader, if you will, although it's kind of weird to call myself that, but whatever, but is that I've established a really good communication kind of, like I'm a really good listener now when it comes to intuitive inspiration. So every day when I ask, like, have me go where you have me go, and there's a beautiful prayer in A Course in Miracles that says, I am only here to be truly helpful. I don't have to worry about what to say or what to do because he who sent me will tell me. And I'm happy to go where he has me go because you're going with me, basically. So when I sit down, I basically just say a little prayer, like I'm only here to be truly helpful. And I say to God, my spiritual team, source, love, light, whatever you want to call it, please help me not to be stupid. And I say, please help me to be helpful. And I'm turning over my ears, my mind, and my mouth to you right now. And so I often say, like, that's why, like, the transcripts crack me up, because when Michelle, you mentioned this at the beginning, I sometimes have no idea what I just said. I don't know what I'm saying. And it's not that I'm in like a channeled state. I'm very, like, I'm there, but there's a part of my mind that is in communion with something beyond me. A lot of times it's helping me to kind of produce the show on the spot, if that makes sense. So I was a yoga teacher who, like a lot of yoga teachers, when they first come out of their yoga teacher training, they'll make like, oh my God, like a gazillion notes. They write down the songs they're going to play and the postures they're going to do. And I always say, if you pre-prepare and you do a whole class on back bends, and then 5 of the 10 students have back issues, you aren't actually helping the people that are in front of you. You're serving this idea that you had. And so I do the same thing with everything that I do. I don't over prepare because that makes me more anxious. Then I feel like I'm in a box. So I just trust that I'm going to have the words that I need. And so I basically open myself up to be a conduit, to be helpful. And sometimes I'll just lead off with a title or a piece of a snippet of a story or just something. And then I just trust myself. That's the greatest thing, is I'm not trying to please people. I'm not trying to be anything. I'm not trying to get my message out there. I'm like, I'm going to sit down like I'm talking to an old friend. I'm going to be conversational. I'm going to tell some good stories. We're going to have a good time. And hopefully somebody's going to walk away with something that was valuable that they can start to apply to their life today. Because to me, the thing about the show is big spiritual concepts, but in a really applicable, down-to-earth way. Because what's the point of knowing a thing, theorizing about a thing? If you can't live it, it doesn't really mean anything. So that's really how I approach it, is to just be loose with it and to trust. And part of my brand is genuineness and down-to-earth. So I love bloopers. I love, like, sometimes my cat starts screaming out there. I love that, like, you know, I take a sip of water and spill. Like, I don't care about that. I'm not trying to impress anybody. I hopefully will leave an impression, but however they decide, one way or the other. But I'm not trying to be anything other than me.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And I think you said something really interesting a while ago about when you have a guest too. It's like your guest is like, you're naturally curious and you're naturally curious about the person. So by not over preparing and not knowing everything about them already, it leads to a much better flowing interview, and, like, you know, your audience will get so much more out of it because you're so curious and naturally curious that it leads for such fantastic interviews. And I think that's a really good point that I want our audience to really, I want them to let that sit with them, is that, you know, being curious of what your guests are here to offer and what their stories are. I think that's a huge, huge, huge point. I want to just make sure they're listening to that, because I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think one of the things, so when I've been asked to be on other podcasts a lot and summits and stuff like that, and what happens is I'm always watching people's interview style, and I know what feels good to me. You know, and it'll be interesting, like somebody will ask me that question, you know, do you want to start with your origin story? Tell us how you got into this spiritual mentoring, da-da. And I'll talk for like 10, 15 minutes about my dead, murdered mother. And they'll be like, oh, that's great. So what you're, you know, and they go right on to their next question because they're so prepared. So they're not actually listening. And right now, what the world is desperate for is, number one, is real stories, genuine stories, real connection. And what they also want is, what we need now is deep, generous listening. The world would be a different place if people from both sides, the others, all the ways we claim we're different and separate from each other, if we actually had deep, generous listening skills. So if I'm sitting there with a prepared list of questions, I've already decided what's worthy of talking to you about. I've already decided what's important. And I could ask a question and it could go all of a sudden go out here. And I'm like, ooh, like, but it's like, nope, I got to stick to my questions, right? So I always just think like having a level of trust. And I would rather them go long and then you could edit, but I don't think we actually edit anything out of my show. I think we just like, no, we don't, right? Because I like the bloopers. I don't give a shit, right? So I'm like, oh yeah, just tack the intro and the outro and whatever. So I don't like go hardcore into it, but
our shows too.
Saves you guys time too. But I want there to be an organic kind of spaciousness to things where miracles can happen and ahas can happen and great stories can happen. And if I put it in the box, like if I chain it too much, it's lifeless to me. That's not fun to me. So that was my mantra as a kid. And I'm sure you guys have children, you know, why mom, why mom, why mom, why mom. But that why phase never ended with me. So I'm wicked curious about people. And so when I have a guest on, I also know like, you know, this is about them and I really want to honor them. And I want to ask them questions that allow them to reveal the depths and the truth of themselves too, because we all have amazing stories. We all have amazing stories.
Yeah, you're really creating that space for them to be able to share their wisdom and knowledge and how that can support other people. We have no idea. You just let that happen in the space you create.
Yeah. And because I think we're all so quick to judge each other. Like that's what the ego mind does, is it loves to judge. Mm-hmm. So you'll see somebody, like you look at Jordan, like who was on my show, right? Like episode 4, you see Jordan like on the street, you're going to be like, and you're going to immediately assign some label to him. Mm-hmm. And so the beauty of that show, it's the most downloaded episode. That show has helped him. I'm not taking credit for it, but him having the space to be himself, things are shifting in his life. And he has gotten so much feedback about talking about mental illness and all these things. People have been reaching out to him and it was so impactful. And that number just keeps growing. That one episode just keeps growing because now the vegan community is kind of getting a hook in it and they're taking it places. And so I just think, if we just give people a chance to be themselves, they will amaze us. I mean, it's really a miraculous thing when you give somebody room to tell their story. And because what it is like you're trying to find anybody who does interviewing, right, or have guests on, you're trying to find the universal spiritual meaning or the universal lesson in very personal stuff. And you cannot possibly extract it for your listeners if you're not paying attention and you're too busy worrying about your next question. You'll miss out on the golden nuggets.
I have made that mistake before in interviews and it just makes for a terrible interview too. And it stresses you. If you just have a natural conversation with people, it all flows way better rather than like, what's the next question? Because that's all you're thinking about is what's the next question? Like, it's true. You don't even listen to what they're saying. It's crazy.
And that's where it's going right now. Like everything in branding and stuff in putting your voice out there is really going towards the conversational. People don't want super structured anymore. They want to feel like they're listening in on a conversation between friends. And I think if you can just show up, again, it's really about trust. There's a lot of trust that has to happen. And people don't get those podcasts out there because I'm in your little group and I watch and I see, I'm not judging anybody, but I can see when somebody's dragging their feet. I can see when the stories are happening in their mind of why they haven't hit record yet or why they haven't done it yet.
Referring them to you.
No. So what I'm saying is we get it in our own way because we don't trust ourselves or we don't trust the process or this. And it's just fear. It's just fear. But once you start doing it, do you remember how many times it took me because of, it had nothing to do with the content, but the quality of sound with the intro and the outro. And look, here's the thing. You got to get some skin in the game and you got to work hard. It's not like once you get the system down, like you guys have the protocol for the flow sheet in the system, right? Once you know what the system is, it's like, oh, yeah, I just got to do this. But the beginning, you guys, I just want to encourage you. If you're thinking about doing a show, the world needs your voice. You got to do it. And you got to be willing to be fucking uncomfortable. That's just it. You got to be willing in the beginning to be a little uncomfortable, to hear the sound of your own voice, to flub up, to make mistakes, to re-record it 17 times if you need to, that first intro and outro. But good news, I mean, usually once you do the intro and outro, they're done.
Yeah, and remember, it's not about you.
So,
it's about your message. It's about your listeners, right? It's not about you. Yeah.
I just want to go back quickly. Sorry, I know we're running out of time. We don't take too much of your time. But something you were saying about people don't want the big, what was it, the word you used? But it was the big branded thing. And I think what it is people are really getting attached to the authenticity of a brand. So the more you hear somebody speak, the more intimately you know them, especially with the intimacy in the ears, as we've touched on, the more authentic you feel that connection and the more drawn you are to whatever that person is doing. And that could be a coach, could be an author, speaker, that could be a brand, right? People love the Wendy's Twitter person, they love the Burger King Facebook person because they go out and they connect and they don't follow a script, right? They're just being themselves. And that's what people are attaching to these days. So with podcasts, it's pretty hard to hide your authenticity. If you're just going at it in your closet by yourself for an hour, there's not much you can hide. So
yeah, they'll sniff it out. They'll sniff it out too. And everything you said, Braden, is right on point. It's like, I think people are kind of tired of being sold to, of being pitched to, of being whatever. They like, tell me who you are and then let me decide if we're a good fit. Mm-hmm. So if you're trying to put on airs or trying to be, now look, your brand might be highfalutin. I don't drive a Ferrari. I don't live in LA anymore. I don't have all the, that's not that interesting to me anymore. Hey, nothing, if you like those things, God bless, I say like, I'm 50 now, so I'm very aware. Like my life is half over. So with the time I have left, like what do I really want to do with it? And when I first start working with clients, I have them write down what's called the big three. We call it the big three. And so whether it's your 3 core values, the foundation you stand upon, the alignment, the divine alignment for your brand, your business, yourself, your personal life, whatever. I do work with entrepreneurs, but really the people who come to me are are working through some deeper stuff. And not that business isn't a deep stuff, because trust me, if you want to know yourself, start a business. But one of my core 3, my big 3 is authenticity. So I don't even know, like I laugh all the time. I'm like, I don't know how to not be me. Like if I often think like, what would it be like to be an actor? And this is what was so fascinating for so many years. And I just learned this is why I'm going to share it. For so many years, I thought, when you become an actor, you take on this role. Like it's like putting on another skin suit. Like you step into this role. And somebody, I can't remember who the actor was, but what they said that I found fascinating, and this landed in me. They said, you can never actually play a role without with any conviction if you don't allow part of yourself to show up. So I was like, so when the guy, plays like a rapist or a murderer or a sinister person, or, if I know an actor is straight and they play, somebody who's transgender or gay or whatever, I just think they're bringing some part of themselves to that role, because we all have those various shadows and light like within us. So I was the same thing with podcasting. Like I'm not like the same reason why I don't use filters on Instagram. I'm not trying to change I'm not trying to present some perfect package. I'm not trying to get you to like me because being pretty. There's nothing wrong with that. Hey, if that's part of your brand, you got boobs in the face and go for it. But for me, the older I get, the more I'm trying to strip away what's barriers and the blocks to revealing who you really are. So that's interesting to me. And so I think that the podcast is just a way to keep revealing and being honest with yourself and being honest with your viewers. And this is what's important to me this week. And hey, you guys, I learned this. This might be helpful. And I feel like I'm just having a conversation with like a bunch of my friends.
Information but I mean the like canned episodes, like the things you're good at talking about, and you got to get deep in there and be like, okay, what do I really love talking about? Who am I? That's where we do that real work. So maybe we should come back and do another episode on how to find your true voice.
Well, as a writer, I always have a piece of, like a little notebook, a mini like notebook and pens in my bag always. Then you always have your phone. So if I'm out in the world and I hear something, see something, smell something, reminds me of something, or I write it down. I keep a list of like, oh, that's a good episode. Like I said something on a podcast yesterday, and she said, that's a really good essay. She's like, hey, that's an awesome episode. Write that down. So ideas come to me all the time. The biggest problem is not writing them down and then forgetting them. So
Right.
I haven't bumped up against, but I will say this. Sometimes I'll say, this is what I need to talk about. And I'll sit down, I'll get my little mic and I do the whole thing. And then I start to talk and it's just like, nope. No. I'm like, abort. So I just end it and I go, fuck, man. All right, what do you guys want? What am I supposed to talk about? And I just get really quiet and really still and I listen and I go, all right, I guess we're talking about Mr. Rogers today. I don't know, whatever. So I haven't bumped up against out of ideas yet, but we'll see where we are in 5 more months.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. Guys, make sure you go listen to Karen Kenney Show, the Karen Kenney Show. Okay, you gotta listen to it. It's amazing. She's done such a great job putting it together. And Karen, thank you so much for coming on today and chatting with us, giving us some behind the scenes, candid, real snippets of ninja tricks of things that you've helped you, and I know will help our audience so much. Just getting over that hurdle, pressing record, and just be themselves. Like, I think that's such an important message. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you guys so much for having me. And it's like Wonder Twin Powers activate. I love you too. And you bring so much to the process. And, you guys, one thing I can't go without saying, I can't leave before I say, is that like you guys are wicked supportive. Like part of your superpower, like I know you're an incredible matchmaker, Michelle, like you're really like good at like a lot of things too. And Braden, you're really good with words and da-da. But there's a combined chemistry. And one of the things you guys do really well is create sacred space and support. And there's a reason why you attract a lot of spiritual entrepreneurs and spiritual coaches and stuff like that, because you're vibing at that level. So you create a really safe space. I think one of the greatest things that people do is that when they give you room to be yourself, and they keep telling you like, you're doing awesome. This is great. This is this. And you guys are so kind with your feedback and whatever. So I'm just telling you guys, whoever's out there listening, if you hear my voice and you are like, I have a podcast idea, you have to talk to my friends, Michelle and Braden, because they will help you to start living that dream and getting that voice out there and doing the thing, whatever that calling is in your heart. You could not find a better or safer or more genius set of siblings to help you do it. So thank you guys for having me on the show and helping me to launch the Karen Kenney Show. And I always want to say it's Kenney, because people call me Kenny like the shoes, Kennedy like JFK. I'm like, it's Kenny with 2 E's. So thank you so much. I appreciate you guys so much. I love you guys. So thank you.
We will definitely have that written accurately in the show notes for you. Click the link, subscribe below.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Bye.